Welcome aboard the Chicago Fire Boat Tour. Join our expert guide, Cliff, as he explores the meaning and origin of Chicago's name, details about the Great Chicago Fire, and more. Embark on the final part of our journey, where fascinating stories and breathtaking views await. Accompanying us is our little explorer, 4-year-old Bennett. With his boundless energy and curiosity, Bennett adds a touch of wonder and excitement as we navigate through Chicago's rich history and stunning architecture. So sit back, relax, and get ready to see Chicago like never before through the eyes of a child and the wisdom of our guide. Let's set sail and dive into the heart of Chicago.
Guys, we have the go-ahead to come into the locks again. Now we have the green light here, which allows pleasure boats to come in as well as commercial vessels as ours. We get the yellow light, but we can go in on the green as well. And we're going to be here. It's going to be a repeat of what we did going down the river, and I'll be back with you when that east gate opens, but the tour is far from done. Now we've got a few more stories to share with you. So we're going to talk about the Chicago flag, what those 4 stars mean, and those 2 blue stripes. Also, what Chicago means. Where did that come from? What does Chicago mean? I want to share that with you. Let's see. I also want to talk about the phrase Windy City, because most people think it comes from the weather here, the environment, the wind, but it doesn't. So I think you're going to enjoy that. And we've got a few more specials here we're going to throw in. We've got 2 World's Fairs I've got to talk about, and a very, very legendary fire that the Bussy was involved in 1967. We're going to end our tour with that. But we still got some great stuff coming, guys. So sit, enjoy, carry on. If you need a beverage or some refreshment, Manny's there at the bar waiting for you. And on behalf of everyone here on the boat today, that's Captain Ray, that's Manny, that's Ed, and myself, we do again thank you for being here. And if you have any questions, don't forget, my name is Cliff. I'm right here to chat with you. So thanks again, everyone. I'm going to hand this back to Captain Ray. We're going to get docked up here for a little bit. We'll be on our way shortly. So thank you all again.
Take 1 extra, do that. I can get another one if you want. Down there, Bennett, of what it looks
Without that water, we would not be here right now. The city would not be able to survive. So Chicago River and Michigan, the 4 stars. All right. The first star, the one closest to the flagpole, stands for the founding of Fort Dearborn in the 1790s. That was the first non-native settlement here in the Chicago area. Don't forget, 3 horrible days, October 8th and 10th, Chicago did burn almost completely to the ground. The 3rd and 4th stars represent the 2 World's Fairs we have here. We had one here in 1893, and that was the Columbian Exposition. That was on the south side of the city. That was just an amazing fair. I'll be talking a bit about that when we get back out on the lake. And the 4th star, that is the 2nd World's Fair we had here in 1933, 1934, and that was the Century Progress Fair, held right downtown here in Chicago. Now, the name Chicago, where does that come from? All right, we're going to go back a number of centuries at this point, everyone. And keep in mind, before this city, long before the city was ever here, the original inhabitants within this area, many Native American tribes were here. There were 4 particular ones who were very powerful. They were the Sauk, the Fox, the Kickapoo, and the most powerful of all of them were the Potawatomi. Potawatomi in English means people of the river. And they did live around the Chicago River and for many miles around this area. And when the first European settlers, this is after, by the way, Jean-Baptiste Pontresable, he was here first. But when some other English settlers came, they set up a trading post area in a small village right near the mouth of the river, not far from where Jean-Baptiste once had his trading post. And they set up in a low swampy area. A lot of wild animals and wild garlic grew there. And it was rather wet and cold all the time. local Potawatomi in a very large village not far from here were trained to these Europeans, and they asked them, why did you put a village here? It's wet, it's rolling, it's not the best place. Why did you move upland a bit? And the Europeans said that, well, we want to be near the mouth of the river so we can trade with anybody who comes and goes. So the Potawatomi, who gave them that land to live on, said, well, all right, as you see fit, you can stay here. And they named the settlement Chicagoo. Chicagoo. And no one ever asked what it meant. So the European English said, okay, well, Chicagoo, Chicagoo. So the settlement grew and continued to be called Chicagoo, and eventually it was anglicized to what? Chicago. Right? And it was only then, when those early settlers found out what it meant, to make a change, we already have that. Because what is Chicagoo, which is now Chicago, what does that mean? Hey, go on, guys. It means village in wild uplands. So there it is. That is true. No, that's not the case at all. It comes from something else. And this is true. Not from the weather, not from the winds, but you can thank Chicago's politics for giving it the name Windy City. Because back in the 1800s, it was well known around the country. It was one of the most outrageous things spoken by professional politicians came out of politicians from Chicago. And specifically, two aldermen, their nicknames were Bathhouse John and Hebe. And if you want to look at a picture up on your phone, you can find it. It's a great picture of the two of them sitting together. They look like wheeled up. And I asked him, would you buy waterfront property with these two guys on one little ideas of Windy City? I think most people, they've heard of the name Fitzgerald for Expedia. Chicago has its rest also. And there's one I want to share with you right now because it has an amazing story. It is out of Lake Michigan. And that U-boat is sunk 20 miles off the shore of Lake Michigan. I'll tell you that story. You know we talked about the SS Eastland earlier on, the passenger boat? All of this too, that are in their lives. After World War I, the armistice was signed, surrender was over. The German Navy was required to retire all of its fighting ships to the British. But rather than get most of them over, they scuttled it instead. However, a number of the submarines from the First War were sent to the British Isles, and they had plenty of them. They didn't know what to do with them all. So the submarines were offered to other Allied nations. Would you like one? So I went for fundraising for an exhibit of what happened. And the United States did take one. We took the UC-97. And it was used to raise funds paid for the war effort when the war was completed. And the UC-97 is still under their own power. We head up and down the East Coast, and people would come to visit and be amazed at this tremendous piece of technology. Keeping in mind that back then there was no TV. People got their news from the radio or from newspapers, so it was really something to see this German warship up close. And UC-97 headed down to the coast, and it eventually made its way into the Great Lakes, all across the Great Lakes. And it was the first submarine ever to enter the Great Lakes. Well, when she finished her working tour, she was tied up in Chicago here on the Chicago River, where she stayed for a few years. But according to the armistice, all submarines have to be destroyed for a certain number of years went by. So in 1921, it was time for the UC-97 to be scuttled. She was towed out into Lake Michigan. This was part of that. And she was towed out to the center of and she was used as target practice by U.S. gunboats known as the Wilmette. So the Wilmette sank her, and she was lost to history. But the Wilmette, the USS Wilmette gunboat, started out her life in 1903 as the SS Eastland. It was a ship that turned over on the riverbank we talked about earlier and took 844 souls with her. When she was raised, she was sold to the Navy and she was used as training and as a guard ship here in Chicago.
No touching.
But I find it ironic that she would have continued on her life as a Navy gunship. But yes, out in our Lake Erie one, we do have some very famous shipwrecks. But one that's almost unknown is the UC-97. Yes, we do have a German U-boat at the bottom of our lake. So coming out further, everybody, we are going to be heading back toward our dock very, very shortly. And if you look off the bow, just off to our right, everyone, you're going to see a lighthouse over there. So that lighthouse is the Chicago Harbor Light, and that was built in 1892, 1893, and it was built for the Columbian Exposition. That was the first World's Fair held here in Chicago. Now, the Columbian Exposition was all the way on the south side, down a few miles there, and that's what originally once stood. And this lighthouse showed the absolute state-of-the-art level of marine technology for the 1890s. No one had ever seen a lighthouse like this before. It was tremendous. It had one of the most powerful lights you could imagine in it, a Fresnel number 5. And so it was on exhibit at the Columbian Exposition. Some years after the Columbian closed, which closed in 1994, and I think the year was 1913, this lighthouse was moved. It wasn't originally here. It was down on the south side. And it was moved where you see it now and operated as the harbor light for the city of Chicago, and still does. It is still a fully functional lighthouse. We're going to get up real close to it, so a great place for pictures if you're taking photos. It's coming up. But an amazing lighthouse. By the way, it's fully automated right now. Back in the day, though, when you had lighthouse keepers, they would come out here sometimes for 3 months at a time, and there'd be supply boats that would come out to keep them stocked with food and eating material and things like that. But right now it is completely automatic, and it is on the places, and also the registered in Chicago. And we're going to be coming past that right now. Since we are talking about the Columbian Exposition, yeah, that was down in Hyde Park, a few miles south of us here. If you look off to the starboard or the right side of the ship, you're going to see a clump of buildings sticking up over there just through the mist. Yeah, that's the north end of Hyde Park. So that is where the Columbian was. If you go down there today, actually, that's where the University of Chicago is. And the Columbian Exposition was on the Long Palisade, just south of the U of C buildings. And there's some fun stuff down there, I have to say, because if you do go to the University of Chicago, there is an archaeology museum there called the Orient Institute. Well worth visiting. So if any archaeologists or would like to be archaeologists on board, it's a little gem that a lot of people in Chicago are not aware of. Excellent exhibits, ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, Samaria, you name it. And one reason I bring up that museum there was a British archaeologist whose name was Wallace Budge. And you might know his name, there's no reason you should, actually, unless you're in the industry. But Wallace Budge, who was associated with the British Museum, yeah, he worked in Egypt, he worked in the Middle East. He was the inspiration. He was the inspiration for another archaeologist. He was actually based on a real person.
Do you see that lighthouse?
Now, I can't
That's
say
the
that
lighthouse, Bennett. You see that?
Used a whip, but he got involved in the same kind of high shakes that Indy did. So if you're down on the south side and visit the University of Chicago, check out the Orient Institute as well. By the way, guys, wonderful shot. I'm taking pictures here off to the right. All this postcard picture of Chicago. And I do want to bring your attention one more time to Vista St. Regis Tower. That's the tall blue one that we saw on the river, the really big one there. And if you look up to Vista St. Regis, don't forget, tallest building in the world, designed and built by a woman, right? If you look about 12 stories below the top of that building, it's not an optical illusion. It looks like there's a hole in the building, right? There's a big opening on the other side. Yep, there it is. And you're wondering, gee, am I imagining things? No. Even though Chicago did not get its nickname Windy City from the wind, well, it can get pretty windy out here. I mean, the lakes are really mini oceans here, and it can get pretty blustery. So there is a regulation for architects here that if you go above a certain height of a building, you have to have something in or on it that allows the wind to blow through it because it puts terrible stress on the structure. So that opening there is real. You're seeing it. That's called a blow-through. And that allows the wind to blow right through the building without adding any extra stress to the structure itself. So yeah, Jeannie's building there was, she had to put one in, so she did. So that's what that is, in case you're wondering, why was it built that way? Now, we are coming again south on the lake. We're going to be heading back to Monroe Harbor very shortly. But I do want to talk about our second World's Fair, and that was the Century of Progress Fair in 1933. And there are two buildings that were built for that, and they're on our museum campus. Now, they're right ahead of us on that promontory of land, and you'll be able to see them very clearly when we get close enough to them. But right off the bow, Yeah, you might see a dome, a bronze dome with a silver curvy roof around it. That's right off the front of our boat. That's the Adler Planetarium, and we'll be coming real close to it real soon. And the Adler planned for the fair to open. The other building there that was built for the World's Fair of 1933, if you look right at about 2 o'clock, you're going to see a white building there with, looks like there are big picture windows facing us right on the shore there. And you might, if you got good eyes, see a conical dome. That is the Shed Aquarium. And that'll be to the west or the right of the Adler Planetarium. And the Shed Aquarium, also built in 1930, was built for the World's Fair of 1933. And the Shed Aquarium was the first aquarium ever built on a freshwater coast. It's a saltwater aquarium. And the lake is freshwater. You got saltwater creatures in there. How are we keeping them alive? Because we didn't know how to turn fresh water into salt water back then. So what did we do? All right, ingenuity. We couldn't make salt water, but we could build a special train car. To the right of the aquarium, you can see a very tall building behind the tree line there. It looks like you can see the top of a very large Greek temple. That is the Field Museum of Natural History. That is a world-class cultural and natural history museum right up there with the Smithsonian. That opened up in 21 when it opened up. And we, by the way, have some wonderful exhibits there, but we have one of the best dinosaur exhibits in the world. If you've never been to the Field Museum, and I have any dinosaur people on board, I did see one dinosaur t-shirt earlier on, one of the best collections there, and we do have the largest and the most complete Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton in the world. We even named her. Her name is Sue. And she's such a diva, she is such a celebrity, she even has her own gallery. So if you have a chance to go visit the museum, if that is the sort of thing you like to do, please stop by and see Sue and pet her on her bony little nose for me, because I know she would like it. Now the last story I want to share with you, everyone, and this is a fire, the story of a fire that the bus you're on right now was directly involved in. This was a historic, legendary fire. That was in 1967 on January 16th. Guys, right between the Adler Planetarium, slightly to your left off the bow of the Shed Aquarium, there's a building right in the center, right behind the tree line, and that is the McCormick Place. Or I should say the new McCormick Place, because the old one burned to the ground in 1967, and here is its story. Now, for those of you who know how cold Chicago can get in the wintertime, it can get pretty cold here. And it was a very cold January in the city. The temperature has been below 20 or 25 below zero for 5 or 6 days. And it is after dark on January 16th. The night watchman at McCormick Place smelled smoke in the building, and he went to investigate, and he saw a fire breaking out in the exhibit area. So he runs to call the fire department and calls the fire alarm. And a few minutes later, 3 or 4 land-based units show up. And of course, right there, it's after dark and it's freezing. They hook up all their hoses and hydrants around the building, only to their horror to find out that the water was frozen. The hydrants aren't working. And the McCormick Place, when it was built, was considered a fireproof building, right? So there were no sprinkler systems. Fireproof, like the Titanic was unsinkable. Same thing. And what was called in as a 3-alarm fire explodes into a 5-alarm special. The most dangerous of all, and it threatened to burn down this whole side of the city. And that's when the Bussy got the call. She was at her action station on the confluence of the river over there, inside. She comes roaring out of the river with her 2 sister ships, Schrager, who we saw at the locks, and the Medill, which is no longer with us. They set up station on the lake side of that building and began to pour water onto that inferno. Keep in mind, this boat could throw 10,000 gallons a minute, and they began to try to control the fire. But before dawn, about 5 hours later, the land-based units were finally able to get hydrants and frozen. They joined the fight. And by dawn, the fire is under control. And by midday the next day, on the 17th, the fire is extinguished. But the building is unsalvageable. And the new one stands there in its place. As a matter of fact, right now, if you take a look, just west of the Adler, you're going to see 5 or 6 little stacks sticking up over a low building there. That is the McCormick Place that's there now. So a new one stands there in her place. But yeah, new building, but sadly there was one fatality, and that was the night watchman who called in the blaze. Now everyone, we are coming back into harbor here. We're going to be through the breakwater very, very shortly. And again, a wonderful time to take some pictures of the skyline here. Don't forget, it was Montgomery Ward who made this happen. So besides it has some great deals in his mail order catalog, yeah, he also helped keep Chicago free of factories. So hooray for that. But I did promise to mention the fountain one more time, and you can see that just on the other side of the breakwater, right on the shore there. You can see a fountain there, sort of spouting a bit. It's not on the hour. It's every hour on the hour when it sends that geyser 150 feet up in the air. But Buckingham Fountain was donated to the city of Chicago by a Chicago, and her name was Kate Buckingham, and she was an art collector and a philanthropist and a millionaire. And this is back in the 20s, 1927. She had a younger brother by the name of Clarence who died suddenly, and she wanted to commemorate his passing. So she had this beautiful fountain built to memorialize him and to give to the city of Chicago as a beautiful piece of architecture and structure. And so it was built here with its own funding. The city doesn't pay for it. It has its own Buckingham Fountain Fund. And people take enjoyment out of that every day when the weather warms up like it is now. You've got picnickers, sightseers, people just hanging out. Or if you know how humid Chicago can get in the summertime, people love to stand on the far side of that fountain that gets sprayed. I can tell you that right now. And it's also in Grant Park, one of our biggest parks here. And some beautiful, beautiful architecture. Really, really cool. We've got some good beer in the city, guys. If I have any beer drinkers here. A lot of good breweries, and we do go out with local brewed beers on our booze cruises, some fun stuff. And if you're looking to do something special on a special day that you yourself can do a very special day on a family, we're also available for private bookings. So we're always called. And with everyone, I want to say also that if you have a moment, the spirit moves you. It's up to you. If you feel like putting a few words on any social media, and specifically TripAdvisor. Right now, we are listed in the top 5 attractions here in Chicago. We are listed on the top 2 of attractions on the water. So if you'd like to put a few words, it does make a difference. It does count. It does help us. So do that. We thank you in advance. And if you like the tour, and if you like me talking on the tour, you can say, hey, we had a great time with Cliff. If you didn't like the tour, use someone else's name. But anyway, we do thank you for being here. And I'm going to leave you at this point with this last phrase, this last greeting. And that is, it was an old 18th century sailor's farewell. And that phrase is, may you have fair winds and following seas.
Is that your hat?
Yeah, is that a hat? Let's put on
Wow,
my
it's heavy
hat.
now. It's very heavy.
Wow, look at that. Look at Bennett.
It's really heavy. Okay.
The firefighter captain. Is it straight
Straighten it
up?
out a
Yeah.
little.
It's taller.
I know it's too big for you. It's sort of-
Okay.